All right, so here we have described that using Mongoose that we want to connect to a collection called quizzes that lives in this database, right? And the quizzes objects in there looks like it has the structure is to have the primary key ID, we have the titles and averages, right? And here we just describe the data that we want to connect to, right? So this is going to be used by Mongoose to do some validation to make sure that that we're inserting things of the correct data type and whatnot. All right, so once we have the schema, the next step is to create what is called a model, a Mongoose model that is going to allow us to actually interact with the database, right? So we're going to create a model and say this will be quizzes model, right? And again, we use the Mongoose library to create the model. And to create the model, this takes two arguments. The first argument is it's a unique identifier that registers the model with the Mongoose infrastructure, right? It's arbitrary. You can call it whatever you want, right? As long as it's unique within Mongoose. Also, later on, we'll see the usefulness of naming these things uniquely so that you can have different schemas referencing each other, but we'll do that a little later. For now, we just need to make sure that this is unique, and we'll just call it the quizzes model. Right. The next argument to implement a model is to provide the schema that we're creating the model for. So this is kind of like the equivalent in JPA, where for the schema, the equivalent in JPA is that you create an entity. You create the class, you annotate it, right? And these are all the fields, their data type. And the model in JPA, in Java Persistence API, the equivalent is that the model is kind of like the repository, right? If you remember, the repository provided all sorts of functionality out of the box, right? Some primitive functions that allow you to interact with the data. So same thing. The model here is going to give us some very generic functions, right? That's going to allow us to interact and retrieve quizzes, store quizzes. So let's use this model to see if we can retrieve some data from the database.